These allegations are explosive.
Actor Shia LaBeouf will soon have to answer for some pretty severe accusations. His ex, singer FKA Twigs, alleged in a lawsuit that LaBeouf kept loaded guns beside their bedside, knowingly gave her an STD, and even killed stray dogs to get into the mindset of a murderer. But what does LaBeouf have to say about all this?
I hurt that woman.
This quote, I hurt that woman, obviously is, for a prosecutor is a nugget of gold.
LaBeouf is headed to civil trial this fall, years after multiple women came forward with shocking allegations against the once celebrated actor.
There is another woman who has made some similar allegations as well, and that, really buttresses these claims, and I think makes LaBeouf essentially radioactive.
We're taking a closer look at what to expect at that coming trial and the bombshell accusations against him.
Well, it's explosive, and as a matter of law, knowingly transmitting an STD to somebody is it's essentially strict liability.
Let's start with LaBeouf himself. He got his start as a Disney Channel star on the sitcom Even Stevens. But from there, his career skyrocketed after appearing in major franchises like Transformers and Indiana Jones. In 2018, LaBeouf began filming the semi-autobiographical movie Honey Boy, and that's where he met FKA Twigs, whose legal name is Tahliah Debrett Barnett. Twigs played the character Shy Girl and started dating LaBeouf shortly after production wrapped. The pair dated for about 9 months, during which time Twigs alleges months of abuse, all at the hands of LaBeouf. In December 2020, Twigs filed a civil suit against him, citing sexual battery, assault, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and gross negligence. The case is expected to be tried in October of this year, almost 4 years after that initial filing. Here's entertainment attorney Jonathan Handel.
I would have to somewhat speculate that, to my knowledge, there have been some discovery disputes over what information has to be exchanged back and forth. And in fact, those disputes continue on to this day, even though we have an October trial date set. And in addition, there may have been COVID delays as well, given 4 years ago, we were in the midst of a pandemic.
According to Twigs' lawsuit, Shia LaBeouf hurts women. He uses them. He abuses them both physically and mentally. He is dangerous. For too long, LaBeouf has sought to excuse his reprehensible actions as the eccentricities of a free-thinking artist. The filing lays out the timeline of their relationship, writing, quote, "After LaBeouf had employed a charm offensive on Tahliah, a tactic she now knows he used on other women, LaBeouf convinced her to move in with him. LaBeouf was engaging in grooming, gradually gaining Tahliah's trust and confidence with the intent of abusing her. What followed was a living nightmare for Tahliah. That includes things like isolating Twigs from her friends and family, violently attacking her by strangling her, and at times keeping her captive in rooms of his home." If we're looking at some of the allegations brought forth against Shia LaBeouf, there are things like sexual battery, emotional distress, some pretty severe allegations. So how do you think these things could be affecting his career?
Well, he already was dropped from at least one movie, and I think these allegations are explosive. And there is another woman who has made some similar allegations as well, and that really buttresses these claims, and I think makes LaBeouf essentially radioactive. Now, it's important to recall that someone is presumed not liable until there's proof that they are liable. We have an unusual situation here, though, in that LaBeouf said at one point, "I hurt that woman," apparently referring to FKA Twigs, and in addition made statements that he had hurt other women, that he was had alcohol issues, that he was out of control. I mean, he sort of said a bunch of things, which, but then in the litigation context, when his lawyers filed a response to the lawsuit, they denied every allegation, each one specifically and generally.
Handel is referring to LaBeouf's now famous interview while appearing on the podcast Real Ones with John Bernthal. In the clip, he references these allegations brought on by Twigs and other women.
I hurt that woman, and in the process of doing that, I hurt many other people and many other people before that woman. I was living my life. I was a pleasure-seeking, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, fearful human being.
So let's talk about that "I hurt that woman" quote. So Shia LaBeouf appeared on a podcast and said that, as you said, in reference to Twigs and several other women, that he had struggled with alcoholism and just saying that he hurt them. So is this something, that clip from the podcast, that we could hear when it comes time for trial?
I think absolutely. I mean, this is what lawyers appears to be what lawyers call an admission against interest. In other words, an admission that's against one's own interest, and something of that sort would very much be admissible and very much relevant to the question of culpability here.
As part of the lawsuit, Twigs mentioned Carolyn Foe, who dated LaBeouf between 2010 and 2011. Foe said during their relationship, LaBeouf threatened her, saying, quote, I'm going to kill you. On a different occasion, he allegedly held Foe down by her arms, causing intense pain and leaving multiple bruises, and then headbutted her violently, causing her to bleed on the hotel bed. Handel says Twigs' accusations are bolstered by another woman's account of physical, emotional, and sexual violence. If we're taking a closer look at some of the allegations, sexual battery is one that comes up a lot. And again, there have been no criminal charges filed. So I'm wondering how Twigs' team is going to come forward and prove, I guess, that this happened.
Well, some of it becomes a he said, she said, and a credibility issue. I would expect that she would be on the stand testifying, and presumably testifying in some detail. And LaBeouf may choose to testify or not. In a civil case such as this, his decision, if he decides not to testify, not to directly counter an allegation, can be used as an inference against him. It's not the same as the way it works in criminal cases, where you have a Fifth Amendment right to not testify against yourself, and that's not supposed to be used by the jury or judge or any decision maker as a negative inference. But in a civil case, it can be. So it will come down in part to a credibility contest. Now, there was another woman who claimed that LaBeouf headbutted her to the point that she bled. And interesting question will be whether she will be called to testify as well, to help create a evidence of a claim of a pattern of this behavior. Presumably, if attorneys do seek to call the other woman, LaBeouf's attorneys will oppose that, and get into a fight in front of the judge as to whether that evidence is relevant enough, because it is a separate individual, but nonetheless could cast light on behavior.
One of the bombshell allegations from the lawsuit comes with the accusation that LaBeouf knowingly gave Twigs an STD. According to the lawsuit, Twigs started to experience symptoms in March 2019. When she confronted him, quote, LaBeouf admitted that he had never told Tahliah about his condition before, even though they had been sexually intimate for many months. Further, LaBeouf admitted that he had experienced a flare-up of his disease's symptoms in December 2019, but worked to hide his outward symptoms from Tahliah by applying makeup. One of the bombshells that came out when this lawsuit was filed, and there were dozens of articles about it all over the headlines, that allegedly Shia LaBeouf gave Twigs an STD. He didn't tell her ahead of time that he had it, and then they had sex, and then she also contracted the STD. So this is part of the lawsuit. How does all of that factor into the coming trial?
Well, it's explosive, and as a matter of law, knowingly transmitting an STD to somebody is it's essentially strict liability. I mean, you don't get to say, well, it's her fault. She should have insisted I use a condom, or whatever it might be. Uh, she undertook the risk. It doesn't work that way. It's a very, very, if established as a fact, it's a very bad fact for Shia LaBeouf.
Twigs's lawsuit goes on to describe her apparent emotional distress. That includes things like LaBeouf driving erratically, threatening to crash, sleeping with a loaded gun beside his bedside, and leaving the door unlocked. During this time, Twigs would allegedly be trapped in their shared bed for hours at a time, without the ability to even get up to go to the bathroom for fear that she would be shot by LaBeouf should he wake up suddenly upon her return to bed. On a different instance, Twigs allegedly, quote, awoke to LaBeouf towering over her and violently squeezing her body and arms against her will. LaBeouf then grasped his hands around Tahliah's neck and began strangling her. These allegations included what the lawsuit refers to as a horrific boast. He apparently told Twigs that in order to get into character for his role in The Tax Collector, he would drive around neighborhoods in Los Angeles and shoot stray dogs. LaBeouf claimed he killed these dogs because he wanted to know what it felt like to take a life so he could get into the mindset of a killer like his role in the movie. One of the other things that she's alleging is emotional distress. And recently we've seen LaBeouf's team kind of pushing back on this. They requested her private medical and financial records. And at least according to what I've seen, they were kind of alleging that Twigs's career has skyrocketed since she was with LaBeouf. So how could there be emotional distress if she's doing really well in her career? Is that a decent argument?
That feels like grasping at straws. It may be the best argument that they have on that point, but uh, somebody can have a successful career and be falling apart inside. They're not inconsistent with each other, and um, somebody can fight emotional distress and partially counter it. And I don't think that then the argument that's getting made here is, well, you know, if she was strong enough to counter the emotional distress that Shia allegedly inflicted, then I should get credit for her strength, and therefore she shouldn't be able to recover from emotional distress. It's a heads I win, tails you lose kind of an argument, and I think that it may go down sour with the jury. I'm assuming this is a jury trial, but with the jury or the judge, whoever the decision maker is.
Another point that will have to be considered, LaBeouf's past criminal record. If we're looking at Shia LaBeouf's history, we know that he has prior arrests for both assault and disorderly conduct. Are these things that could be included in this upcoming civil trial?
My understanding is those arrests were the charges were dismissed in perhaps all of those cases, which makes it something that will be fought over. One of the principles of evidence in terms of weighing, evidence that's not directly on point. I mean, this isn't, those are not instances that involve Twigs. Is what's called probity versus prejudice. In other words, on the one hand, probity, how much does the evidence tend to prove and support or undermine a case, versus prejudice, how explosive is the evidence such that that outweighs whatever value there might be to admitting the evidence. And so I would expect that there would be disputes over this as well, particularly since this again falls in the category of past bad acts is the other sort of heading we have for it. We saw in the Bill Cosby case, for example, which was a criminal case, that the case was reversed because of the law in the state of Pennsylvania in criminal cases regarding past bad acts. It's just too explosive that the prejudice outweighs the probity. Now here we're talking California and we're talking a civil case, so whatever Pennsylvania Supreme Court decided does not tell us what will go down here. But the principle and the tension is the same, which is this evidence persuasive and useful enough, or is it so prejudicial without being directly on point, because again, it's clearly not directly on point, because these are not incidents that involve Twigs. It's intended as supporting evidence, character evidence, past bad acts. That's the tension, that's the weighing that a judge would have to do to decide whether that evidence comes in or not.
When it comes time for the trial, there's still the question of whether we'll hear from LaBeouf himself. So we know that Twigs is likely going to take the stand and testify, and still unclear about Shia LaBeouf. What are some of the pros and cons if he doesn't take the stand? If he does, what would you recommend for him if you were representing him?
Well, I don't think I know, enough of the facts and the detail that his counsel would to make a recommendation. But the factors that play into this are severalfold. On the one hand, if he doesn't testify, his how are they going to counter the specific allegations that are being made by Twigs, where only the two of them were present, in the bedroom, in the living room, whatever it might be. Her testimony would go unrebutted, other than by way of cross-examination. If he does testify, the comments that he's made, that he hurt that woman, that he had issues, and so on and so forth, those are going to come back to haunt him, and he will be taken in cross-examination through each incident in a step-by-step, detailed way. You did this next, didn't you? No, I didn't. And then you did this, didn't you? Then you did this. And then you hit her, then you did such and such and so and so. So you don't get to sit up there and get a question, well, did you hurt her? No. Okay, I'll move on. That's not the way it works. It's an excruciating, detailed walk back down a road that that may or may not be difficult for him. Again, we don't know what the truth is here, but we do know that that he said publicly, "I hurt that woman," and he elaborated on that in terms of various issues that he had. That's going to be very tough for him.
It's important to remember this trial is a civil case, meaning there are only allegations and criminal charges have not been filed against LaBeouf. When it comes to high-profile civil cases, another one quickly comes to mind. Now, it's hard to talk about a civil trial, especially a celebrity one, without referring back to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard back in 2022, and we saw both of them take this stand in that situation. So do you think it's possible that either sides are kind of referring to the Depp-Heard trial, kind of discussing what could happen and maybe using it as a blueprint?
I don't think high-powered lawyers would use another trial per se as a involving different people as a blueprint directly, but I do think that each time we have a case like this, that lawyers study it closely, and and see what worked and what didn't work for which side or the other, both in court and also in the court of public opinion, in terms of how to frame things for public consumption. So I would expect that would have some influence, but not per se a blueprint.
After she and Johnny Depp were divorced, Amber Heard penned a scathing Washington Post op-ed about her ex-husband, Depp. She accused him of sexual and physical assault. So Depp sued Heard for $50 million in damages for defamation. Heard countersued for $100 million. What followed were weeks of testimony in the civil trial, with both Depp and Heard taking the stand. In the end, a jury awarded Depp $10 million in compensatory damages and $5 million in punitive damages. Criminal charges were not filed in that case based on Heard's allegations. But what about the future of LaBeouf's case? And some of these allegations, if true, are illegal. And we've only been talking about a civil case here. No criminal charges have been filed, but is it possible that down the line criminal charges are filed?
Depends in large part on statute of limitations, I would think. These and that may be the answer for why there haven't been criminal charges filed. I don't know whether the authorities have reviewed these allegations already and decided that they couldn't charge for whatever reason. But you have statute of limitations issues in particular, as well as questions of provability. But this quote, I hurt that woman, obviously is, for a prosecutor, is a nugget of gold. So we don't know how that's going to play out, or if it already has.
For those following the case as it heads to trial, Handel has some advice.
Try to maintain an open mind until the legal process has played out. Now that's difficult whenever there are explosive allegations made. And it's particularly difficult here, where there seem to be some admissions against interest. I hurt that woman on the part of Shia LaBeouf. But we live in an era where, because of social media in particular, that everyone feels they have to have an opinion immediately about something. And so it's important to remember that unless you're trying to decide whether to hire Shia LaBeouf for your next movie, you don't really have to have an opinion. And it would be helpful for people to try to cultivate the discipline of having a somewhat open mind and saying, okay, here are these allegations, here's this claim. Let's just, wait and see what happens. Some people will want to make a decision now as to, whether they're going to watch a Shia movie. Well, there aren't any new ones, but that nonetheless, I would urge people to try to maintain an open mind. But these are clearly explosive allegations and very disturbing ones.
The case is expected to go to trial on October 14th. According to Twigs' lawsuit, if she receives any compensation, she plans to donate a significant portion to assisting victims of domestic violence. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Shia Gillespie.